Hello again. This is Javier Perales, Senior Strategist at Purpose Lab. And as promised before, today we're going to be talking about strategic models and strategic frameworks, two concepts that are very commonly confused between one another, but they are different things and they both need to be perfectly clear before we can actually start working on a proper strategic plan and strategic management system. First, let's start talking about the concept of a strategic model. And a good way of explaining a strategic model is thinking of an airport, as you see here. Now, if you were an engineer and you were starting to think about how you're going to be building an airport, the first thing that you were going to be thinking about is what are the different elements that an airport needs to have. So there would be the runway, there would be the immigration area, it would be baggage control, both baggage delivery for the passengers and baggage processing. Once you turn in your baggage and then everything that happens inside, you will need to have the, of course, the check-in counters or check-in area. You will need to have a parking lot. But at this point in time, you're only thinking about what are the different elements that your airport would need to have. You're still not putting them together. You're not drawing a plan or anything. You're just thinking, this is everything that my plan needs to have. Well, that is the same concept that we want to be thinking about when we think about a strategic model. When we think about a strategic model, we are thinking about what are the different elements that we will need to be having and that will need to be included as part of the plan. And yes, how they will be interacting, but at a very, very high level. So let's take a look at some of the most common strategic models. To the far right of your screen, you'll have the OKR model. This has been recently popularized mostly by technology companies. So the OKR model, or objective and key results model, you see here that yes, you have your vision and your mission, then you have some values for your organization. This typically happens even if they're not appearing all of the time. You typically would have a value within your organization. And then in this OKR model, you have different objectives that you're working towards. These objectives, they are measured through a key results, that is some kind of indicator. Some kind of indicator. And within those objectives and the way you're measuring them, you have some tasks that you need to complete if you want to achieve that objective. Now, very important thing, and this is one of the main reasons why the OKR model has become so popular, is because these objectives, they are reviewed in short timeframes, in short periods of time. And this is also why some technology companies use the OKR model more than other ones, because of the rapidly changing environment that they're in. An OKR, or a key objective or objective and key result, would need to be updated and revised probably every 3 to 5 months. And 5 months already talking about the longer range. So this is a model that is very, very constantly being updated and renewed. Then here in the middle, you have the Hasin-Kanri model, Hasin-Kanri being a Japanese word that kind of translates to the management compass of your organization. You also have your vision and your mission. You can add a level of values if you want. They're not typically there, but they don't hurt if you have them. And you also have, let's say, mid to long-term objectives. Not to say that in the OKR model, you don't have a long-term purpose, by the way. You still have one, but you're more focused on what needs to happen as stepping stones and how do you keep working on them if you're using that model. But if you're using your Hasin-Kanri model, yes, you would be working on that 3 to 5 years objectives, but then you would be updating your objectives every year. So we're already seeing a little bit of the difference. Your OKR model is updated probably every 3 to 5 months. In your Hasin-Kanri model, you're probably updated more towards a year. And then these objectives, they are broken down into different ways of measuring them and different actions or projects or initiatives that you need to happen. If you are familiar with the continuous improvement environment, it is very likely that what you've used in the past is a Hasin-Kanri model. Now, the model that we've chosen and the model for preference you see on the left of your screen, this is the Cascade model. It actually borrows its name from the Cascade strategy management system that we also use with our clients, and by the way, in which we have special packages for you if you're interested. But the particularity of the Cascade model is that it allows you to be as flexible as possible. So what you're seeing here on screen is that instead of objectives, what you have are focus areas. And this focus areas, or for this focus areas, you set different objectives, but you are not, let's say, tied down to need these objectives to make them yearly objectives or 3 monthly or 5 monthly objectives. You can have the combinations of objectives that you want. We have some clients that have what they call a crucial goal, and that's the most important one that they need to cover, and that keeps them steady throughout the year. They also have some objectives that keep on changing, but they also have some other ones that they update probably a little longer than 1 year. So we love this model because of the flexibility that it provides, and also because of the way that it's organized, and together with the next step in the planning process, which is actually selecting the right framework, you will have probably the best combination that you have. So if you are ready to work with either the OKR, the housing canopy, or any other model that you're familiar with, that's perfectly fine. But if you want something flexible and that can be adapted to your organization, the Cascade model precisely has that, and that's why we love it. So we will determine what are these elements that we want to have, like this focus areas and objectives. Probably we'll have projects. Probably we'll identify that we have projects that have soft projects nested into them, or some KPIs that are directly measuring a project, but some other ones that are directly measuring the compliance of an objective. That's all part of the strategic model. Now, once you have those elements, and let's go back to our airport example, now you need to be putting them together to work. Now, the strategic framework is the one that's going to be telling you how are these elements going to be interacting with one another, depending on the focus that you want to give them. So if you're in that airport and your main focus is to maximize your passengers' travel speed, to make sure that they can fly through the airport, that sounds funny, fly through the airport as fast as possible. And of course, you want to make sure that there are very little things where they can get distracted, that you planify your slots accordingly, that your runway and your waiting area are very close and very properly signaled and organized after your check-in counters. But you can have a different airport with a different focus, where the main objective is to maximize the time that your passengers spend on the airport or in the airport, because you want to make sure that they buy a lot of stuff there. So in the first example, probably the ones paying for that airport are most likely the airlines. In the second example, probably the ones paying for the airport are most likely the shops or the passengers themselves through their taxes or whatever they're spending there, right? But I hope that you start seeing how the focus that you can give the different elements in an airport changes. And this is what we talk about when we are thinking about a framework. So the framework, what we'll give you is an idea or a place to start thinking about initiatives and projects, and this will help you focus your ideas in one way or another. And it's also very important that you know that you can combine some of this if you want. So you have, for example, your balanced scorecard. It's a very common one. You have 4 areas within the organization. Most of the organizations, at least a little bit more mature organizations, already have these areas defined as functional areas. So they have some finance area or some area that in some way or another controls the results of the organization. They have a customer facing or a marketing or sales department, or some department that is in charge of having customer relationships and customer touch. They also have some internal processes, anything and everything that needs to happen on the inside of the company to make sure that everything is done to provide the product or service that you are developing or delivering to that customer. And they also have a learning and growth area. There are some other propositions like, hey, shouldn't we be including like an IT area, for example, or shouldn't we be including your environment? Yes, you can. But the whole concept here of the balanced scorecard is you start thinking about some projects or some concepts as to how you can properly improve all these different areas in a more or less balanced approach. And that's why it's called a balanced scorecard. Now, there's a different approach, and this was put forward by McKinsey, and it's called the McKinsey Strategic Horizon. And the focus here is not so much into functional areas, but a little bit more in terms of where are we playing and what type of products and services we are offering in terms of time and the ambience that we're living within the organization. So for example, horizon number 1 is your today. So what is happening today? What is your main business today? And what do you need to make sure that that continues to be an important source of revenue for your organization? But you can always think about horizon 3. So what will happen in the future? What will change in the future, and how can we prepare ourselves? That would be your horizon number 2, or those steps in between. How can you prepare yourselves to take a leap between horizon number 1 and horizon number 3? So you start thinking already that the way that you organize your ideas and the type of projects that you probably would be thinking about are a little bit different depending on whether you decide to focus on, let's do something in the finance department, in the customer facing department. Then you start thinking about what would happen in the near future, what would happen in the far future, what is happening now, and how can we make sure that that keeps on maturing, or that we are ready for whatever's around the corner. Right. So this is what's happening. Of course, you can have a combination of all of this. You can have a balanced scorecard where you start thinking that different areas within, or different initiatives or projects within each one of these areas, that you're gonna also combine them, for example, in which horizon do they fall on. That's perfectly valid. A third strategic framework, and what we're talking about today are by no means all the frameworks that there are. This is just some of the most common ones. The third one is value disciplines. And this value discipline framework, what you do is you choose one of these 3 and you try to be the best one of that. And one of these 3 is product leadership, operational excellence, and customer intimacy. And that needs to be translated there. So customer intimacy. Whichever one you choose, what you want to make sure is that you become the best in class for that. This does not mean that you will forget about the other ones, just that you're choosing one to start putting all your efforts into. And also you have your ANSOF matrix. This is actually, and funnily enough, this is one of the first strategic frameworks that came to be. It was put forward by a Russian by the last name ANSOF, and it's mostly used when you want to focus a lot in commercial efforts and growing your market, because it is about new products versus existing products, new markets versus versus known markets, and how can you put together the best combination of commercial efforts and products and services to make sure that your market penetration and your sales are maximized as possible. Again, you can combine this, and what a framework together with a strategic model will give you is a way to start thinking about your strategic planning process. This is all about order. And remember, if you follow in one of our first short videos, this is what is included as part of the outer ring. Now let's jump into the inner circle, the strategic DNA, or the why we do what we do. See you in the next video.